how Deuce Knight performs throughout spring will have a big impact on Auburn's quarterback room, but it can impact the rest of the SEC.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We were dapping it up with the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend. We're going to talk about the state of Auburn athletics. Kind of feels pretty good. Kind of feels like things are trending up in the right direction. Was the combine success this past weekend somehow concerning for Auburn? And, of course, we'll start things off today. Deuce Knight. I mean, Darrell, all these shows that we do outside of this as guest appearances or whatever, folks outside of Auburn are really quick to bring up Deuce Knight and to ask the question of, like, what should we expect? Is it 100% Jackson Arnold? And I think some of it is folks not believing in Jackson Arnold, but there's so much excitement about Deuce Knight. And I think you're going to hear and see so much Auburn media about Deuce Knight because he's going to get so many reps this spring. And I think that's huge for the future of Auburn. But if he performs, I think it'll impact the SEC because Auburn's offense will be potent if Deuce Knight puts it all together.
It's one of those things, Zach, that sometimes when you're inside of it, maybe you're blinded to it, but people on the outside that have a more objective view actually might have a better take or a better feel. And that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a lot of chatter about Deuce Knight. It's been the last couple weeks. Then it became an internal thing where I'm hearing some people that I trust say, hey, don't sleep on Deuce Knight. And I'm guilty of that, okay? So I'm going to say what probably a lot of Auburn fans thought and felt is that he comes in, you're excited to get him, let him sit a year, let him learn the system, let him mature, and then he'll be ready in 2026. I think that if I had to rethink that, I might have sold him short. And people that follow college athletics and recruiting and know more about football than I do don't have that feeling about Deuce Knight. They feel like he can compete right away, that he's a difference maker. And in this day and age of college football, where sometimes freshmen do play a lot earlier, I might have sold him short. He may be really putting up a legitimate fight in this quarterback race by the time spring rolls around.
And let me share what I think that means to me is, okay, let's say Jackson Arnold still is 1A and Deuce Knight is 1B when it's all said and done, which is what I think will happen at least, several weeks into the season. I think he will eventually be the true QB2, and maybe he'll push Jackson Arnold. But I still think Jackson Arnold starts the season, and barring any injury, like, we want Jackson Arnold to succeed. But what I think Deuce Knight pursuing that QB1 job and trying to take it from Jackson Arnold, I don't know if it necessarily makes him a starter this season unless something happens. But I think the most realistic scenario is at the end of the year, with Jackson Arnold having 2 years left of eligibility, if you're Hugh Freeze or this offensive coaching staff, it allows you to make a decision and say, hey, Jackson, you can go. We're good here. Thank you for what you did. Thank you for leading Auburn's offense this past season. But if it doesn't work out, if the Jackson Arnold Hugh Freeze experience doesn't work out, it allows you some flexibility, because if it's great and he wants to come back, okay, cool, whatever. We'll deal with that when we get there. But another option that I'm not really seeing discussed is, okay, Jackson, like, we don't need you. Deuce is ready. Thanks. And I think that's a pretty realistic option.
Well, there's two scenarios here that make me really feel good and optimistic about the upcoming season with the quarterback room. Number one, it's nice to have a plan 1B, like you said. Wouldn't Auburn have loved to have had that when Peyton Thorne struggled and you go to somebody else for a change of pace and a spark?
Or Ashton Daniels.
Or Ashton Daniels.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to purposely not bring him up because I always
he's your guy. Let's give him some love.
Yeah, this room is good enough to where there might be a change of pace or a spark getter where Auburn didn't have that last year. So let's just celebrate having multiple options. Now, the scenario you just laid out is very intriguing and very win-win. And let me explain why.
Yeah.
Let's say at the end of the year, Jackson Arnold performs at a level that is average, meaning he's not ready to take that next step to the NFL. Well, what that will mean is if he performs at that level, and make no mistake, we want him to win the job, we want him to succeed because that's what's best for Auburn, okay? But if he doesn't blow it out of the water, then you've got a quarterback race in 2026 that Deuce Knight is very much in and can win.
Yes.
Flip side, let's say he balls out and he does blow it out of the water and he plays so well that he's NFL ready. Well, my God, that's going to be incredible for
which
all
is the true best case scenario.
That's the true best case scenario. But either scenario, in my opinion, has Deuce Knight having a part and a say in 2026. Either one of those scenarios.
Yes. Yeah, I've definitely pivoted away from Jackson Arnold for 2 seasons and Deuce Knight. I've pivoted away from that. And we'll see. We'll see certainly how it goes. And I mean, neither of these guys have done an official practice at Auburn yet. So, I mean, this is super premature. But based on what we're hearing about Deuce Knight and how this coaching staff views Deuce Knight and, you know, some of the impressive stuff that they're doing in workouts and just, you know, throwing unofficially, like we're just hearing more and more incredible things about Deuce. And I also think their mentality is a little different. And once again, a change of scenery could totally change a lot of things for somebody. We saw that with the reports about Keandre Lambert-Smith. I mean, we heard, you know, how much of like he wasn't a leader and all of this stuff. And what did he do the moment he stepped foot on Auburn's campus? He led. Fresh starts change people. There's no question about it. We all know a former coworker that didn't cut it with us originally. They go somewhere else and they thrive. I mean, there's so many different things that go into what makes somebody successful at a certain place and not. But it does seem like Deuce Knight has that hunger that you want in a quarterback. And we'll see if Jackson Arnold has that when he gets here at Auburn. I think those are the two biggest things that we're looking at when it comes to a quarterback evaluation. You need the talent and all that, but you've got to want to be great. And I've referred to it several times. We heard Hugh Freeze talk about it in Mobile when he was talking to reporters at the Senior Bowl. And he's not waiting to be great. He's chasing it. And that really stood out to me. I feel like I've referenced that like 20 times now because that's what you need for quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are discussed differently than other positions for a reason. And you want your head coach to talk about the young 18-year-old version of a quarterback like that. He wants to be great. He's going out to get it. And to me, like, I don't think that could be stated heavily enough.
Well, let's reset. First of all, we know Jackson Arnold has all the tools, and Hugh Freeze has mentioned that you don't become a 5-star Gatorade Player of the Year without. And we've heard the same things about how the receivers talked about. It just feels different, velocity and all that. But what I think you have is I think you have 3 ultra competitive guys that don't want to concede anything in this quarterback room. And I'm not saying, I mean, every college athlete should be competitive and should want to start.
It's different for quarterbacks.
But it's different for quarterback. And I think that, I think that Jackson Arnold did not come to Auburn to get beat out by Deuce Knight. And I don't think Deuce Knight has conceded anything. And I don't think Ashton Daniels, who's played 2 years at Stanford, is like, hey, I'm going to go out there and just be number 3 on the depth chart because they got 2 5-stars ahead of me. That's not his mentality. You can only benefit from having that kind of competitive nature in the quarterback room.
Mm-hmm. It's what they needed. It's what they needed. No question about it. We'll see what that does for the offense and this team over the next few weeks when spring gets going. The combine success from the former Auburn standouts this past weekend, it's awesome. It's really, really good for those guys. Can't wait for KLS and Jarquez and Eugene to hear their names called and play for an NFL team. But I do think we have a few questions to ask about it. That's next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades at Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their website is easy to use, and they've got inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands. You'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies, all with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. Thank you so much for making Locked on Auburn your first listen every single day. Zac Blackerby, the Darrell Dapprich, Montgomery radio legend, here with you. So KLS was one of the fastest receivers at the combine when you look at 40 times. Jarquez Hunter was all around explosive and probably faster than some people thought as well. He checked every box that you want him to check. And then Eugene Asante was seen as one of the most athletic linebackers now in the draft class. And a lot of his stuff charted out well at the Senior Bowl practices as well. And I talked about this through the scope on Monday's show, Darrell, about comparing KLS to Eric Singleton. And we're like, well, Singleton's faster. And it's like, is he? Is he? And then like down the stretch, especially when DeMarcus Riddick started playing, like Eugene Asante seemed to take a step back in the defense. And then, Jarquez Hunter, we all, think that Jarquez Hunter should have gotten more touches this past season. And like, I don't want to like bash anything that happened for Auburn a year ago because some of their former guys did well, but it's just, I don't know. Like, is that the best look in the world? I'm not entirely sure.
I agree with you. It's the first thing that popped into my head. When I started hearing these glowing reports come out of the combine, I'm like, okay, then why did Auburn not have a better season? The questions that popped in my head, Zac, were they used correctly?
Yes.
Or was there not enough usage? Was there underutilization? So all three guys started. Okay, so it's not like they sat the bench. But I think Hunter, we've been talking about all year. We felt like he could have gotten more carries. He might have been underutilized. Mm-hmm. KLS might have been used to throw more deep balls to with 4.3 speed instead of being a possession guy. Let him run some go routes. I truly believe that the only player in that scenario that we couldn't have done any more than we did with is Asante. I think he did.
Sure.
And let's be fair to Hugh Freeze on this. The former coach had him buried on scout team.
That's
and
true.
So at least Freeze recognized his talent, and he started 2 years for Auburn. And I think utilized Asante in the linebacker role that he did and blitz packages and gaps and all that. He really did. Now, is that Durkin using him that way? The other two guys are offensive players, right? Is it Durkin that said, this is how we're going to use Eugene Asante? I don't know. But he was utilized to his fullest, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think some of that, too, was DeMarcus Riddick was so impressive down the stretch. And he's the new guy. He's the future of the defense. Like, the shiny new toy in the room, right, was DeMarcus Riddick and the rest of these freshmen when coming in. So a lot of the attention went to those guys. And that's nothing against Eugene Asante. But, I mean, there were times down the stretch, though, where – and I love Eugene Asante. He's one of my favorite Auburn players ever. Like personality-wise, play-wise, like, but there were times where if I just had all of my brain deleted and I knew no context of it, and I was watching that game, there were times where I would have said Eugene Asante was the third best linebacker on the field behind Dorian Mausi and DeMarcus Riddick. I don't think I'm being too harsh or extreme when I say that. So I don't know. Is it scheme? I mean, they're not testing his ability to play football. They're testing athleticism. I didn't expect him to test out as the second most athletic linebacker in the draft. Like, I didn't see that coming. What was your reaction when you saw the KLS 4.38 40 time or 40 time?
Darrell, you're an idiot because you went on Zac's show and got asked if Singleton or KLS. And I said, I'd take Singleton barely. And the difference, Zac, is because speed. He's faster. And then I see that and I go, wait a minute.
I was shocked.
But in all fairness to us, we didn't see that skill set showed off. And, and that's what I'm saying is, and if what's going to happen if Jalen McLeod gets picked, and he shows out and starts sacking people in the NFL, then you're going, well, then why didn't Auburn have a better year? I mean, I get it to play the what if game, right? And I think you make a really good point about athleticism. How you look in a t-shirt and shorts is not the same as how you play the game. But I did notice, and I was surprised by this, and I never said anything about it to you during the Senior Bowl or on our shows, I was really surprised at how many snaps and how many times Asante was run out there in practice with the first team in the Senior Bowl. I was shocked. I didn't expect that. I thought special teams, second or third linebacker in that position coming off the sideline. Every time they ran out the first team defense, he was in that package. And I don't know. I think he was utilized.
Hugh Freeze even made the comment. He was asked about the guys down there, and he made I'm paraphrasing here, but he was like, I think Eugene's a good player. I hope he gets a shot somewhere. Like, he talked about him as if he didn't have a shot to get drafted, and that doesn't really seem to be as much of the case anymore.
Because what happens is, as you know, your Senior Bowl performance can only take you so far. And then you combine that with people get wowed by metrics and analytics in the combine. And there's two schools of thought to that, is that a lot of football coaches look at that and go, okay, that might be the deciding factor if all things are equal, but that's not going to allow us to pick him over a baller or a player. You know, like, I'll give you an example. That Scattaboo guy, right? Let's say he runs a 4.7. All right. Are you going to pick him over a guy that played at a Group of 5 school that runs a 4.3, knowing what he did in big time college football on the biggest stage? I don't know. So that's where you have to kind of mesh the two.
It's a player personnel philosophy. I think some people would say yes. I think some people would say no.
Right.
But the other interesting thing about Eugene is, I mean, it's a huge reason why a lot of the guys who go to the Senior Bowl and why the combine's so valuable is FaceTime, one-on-one time with players and front office staff and coaches. And like, Eugene Asante is going to be loved by so many teams, because how could you not? He walks into a room and the whole place lights up. But to me, like, it's not about, I don't think it's as much about the defense, because I think Auburn's defense was fine last year. Like, I don't think Auburn's defense last year, like, when you think back of the 2024 season, it's not, man, I wish the defense was better. It was, man, how come we didn't score more points?
Right.
And then you look at it, it's like, well, if you had an outside receiver that could, clock a 4.38 40, and you had a running back that you didn't really give it to consistently towards the end of the season, and it was early in the season when you kept turning the football over, like, why didn't you give Jarquez Hunter the ball more? Like, to me, I think that's where the questions are. And every time we talk about what could be this year, it's stuff like that holds me back from dreaming really big, because the talent is there. This is such a good roster. They just got to use the pieces. And I think we kind of saw a mixed bag of that last year.
Well, besides self-inflicted stuff, what do you consider to be Auburn's biggest offensive letdown, flaw, wart last year, that when you looked at that they couldn't do well?
I mean, taking care of the football was
well,
one
that's
of them.
Self-inflicted, but something that they got to a certain position on the field.
Oh, you're talking about like red zone stuff?
Right. So if you had a guy that ran a 4.3 and ran by everybody, maybe you wouldn't need to worry about scoring in the red zone, because you're scoring from the 30, the other side. And then if you're also having red zone problems, give it to Hunter more. Maybe he punches it in. So you've got KLS running by dudes in a secondary, scoring from the other half of the field, which you ain't got to worry about red zone problems. Or you get inside the red zone, give it to Hunter. That's what I mean about were they used correctly and underutilization. Those two could have been the answer to your red zone problems had you utilized them correctly.
Yeah. I'm there with you. Got to score more points. Doesn't matter how you do it. You just have to score more points this upcoming season. All right. What does the future look like for Auburn? It's hard to not get excited about it. That's next right here on Locked On Auburn. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. I mean, we talk about the roster situation for football, which is exciting to think about how all of this could come together as these young guys, if they stay together and Auburn keeps them here and they grow up together. Obviously, football should be better over the next few years than it has been the last few years. We all hope. But obviously, basketball winning the SEC, baseball off to an outstanding start, softball off to an outstanding start, golf won the national championship last season. Things seem to be trending upward. And I don't know how much of that is John Cohen. I don't know how much of that is just, you finally got all the right coaches in the right spots and you're giving them time to develop programs and build the way they want to do it. But it does seem like things are trending in the right direction across the board.
Yeah, I recently had an opportunity to listen to Andy Burcham interview Cohen, and I was very impressed with his vision for this athletic program. And I think that you're starting to see the fruits of the labor. I think everything you just mentioned, all those sports, and even I know that the women's basketball team has really been a disappointment this year, but the roster that they have coming back next year and the talent is really good in recruiting class. I think that the switch to Nike is another thing that's being underplayed in the psychological aspect of an athletic department and the money and the NIL opportunities that come with that and the exposure and marketing and all the revenue dollars that come with going with Nike. So I think what happens is the last 2 years, you've seen a little bit of a shift. Football struggled a little bit. Basketball got better the last couple of years. They had that one little dip during the COVID year. Baseball had an off year. You mentioned all these sports are starting to go. What I'm seeing is an upward trend. I'm seeing a noticeable trend of upwards trajectory for Auburn athletics. And I think it comes at a good time when you switch brands and apparel. And I think you start to go get coaches that, for softball, for example, that's a genius move. People kind of looked at that and said, you're going to have co-coaches. Mm-hmm. And it's really worked well. One's really an offensive expert, one's a defense. So I love the intensity. I love it. And so baseball, Butch is Butch. He's a stud. So, then you got the facility, the way it was upgraded this year. There are a lot of great things that are on the horizon.
You think Bruce has enough leverage to finally get that stuff added to Auburn Arena now or Neville Arena now?
Well, yeah. Of course, they're doing it internal. They're adding on to Neville Arena, to save money for NIL. Yeah. But my God, if the guy won the national championship, you should give him a blank check and say, get your own standalone if you want. What else do you have to do? That's right. I also love. Do not underestimate the basketball tournament that Auburn is playing in next year when it comes to revenue and NIL. They are playing the Las Vegas NIL, and that is cha-ching. And that is a lot of money, and that will help with anything that you want to do as far as facilities and NIL and retaining athletes. That's a good tournament to be in. It's very elitist, and you get a lot of money. So there you go.
Yeah, so I think the future's bright, and I know we always do. Sometimes I think people are joking when they do it, but I think most people are serious because it's true about the whole everything school thing, and Auburn, I think, has really leaned into that. I think it's true. I think it's certainly true.
You want to know why I think that's 100% factual? People are missing the mark on what everything school means. People from other fan bases and other schools that like to mock that zero in on winning everything isn't everything school. To me, the term everything school means Auburn family and Auburn fans care about everything. It doesn't matter what you're playing. They care. They die hard. They bleed orange and blue. That, to me, is what defines an everything school, is support and care and fandom for everything, not just a couple of sports.
That's right.
Because you're not going to win at everything all the time. But if you have good attendance and people that care at everything, that's, to me, what everything school, the definition of.
Yeah, we got to mention gymnastics too. We talk about.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, gymnastics is certainly up there. I think gymnastics is the third most attended.
Soccer's getting better, and did a really good job last year. And now you've got a coach that's supposedly got some international experience.
Yeah, future
volleyball. Sure. I covered volleyball last year. They used to be awful. They've gotten a lot better. Played in some NCAA tournaments. So that's what I mean by everything school. People care and show up at these sports.
Yep, that's right. That's right. If you tuned in expecting basketball, don't worry. Darrell and I, we went live right after the game. You were probably sleeping, which is totally okay. But be sure to go check that out. It's on the same YouTube channel or audio feed, however you're consuming the show. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on X, DAP6410, Instagram, Darrell Dapp. I'm with you on Wednesdays and Fridays, just regular Locked on Auburn shows. And then, as you mentioned, we go live. And then we do have this little fun trio thing we do on Sunday night with Charlie 5, a.k.a. Kyle Rush, at 8 o'clock on the Barn YouTube channel, where we all three do a live show together. And that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is a lot of fun. So be sure to check that out as well. Please like the video. Please subscribe. If you're tuning in on audio, please subscribe there and leave us a 5-star review. Helps the show out a ton. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked on Auburn.